Thank you very much, Director. A very good morning to all of you friends who have joined this call this morning. I'd like to thank the campus for the continued effort in these public engagements. Indeed, you are doing what is expected of us to be able to cause discussion of topical issues, to be able to provide information to business and other stakeholders so that we can see a general improvement in business across the country. I'd like to thank our guest speaker this morning. Thank you for agreeing to be with us this morning to discuss a very important topic. This is something that happens in ourselves, in our homes, in our organizations, at the country level, at the international level. Today, when you see what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, that it has affected the entire world. Our prices are up because of imported inflation from Europe. So this subject of conflict is extremely important, and I look forward to listening to it. But I want to say this. Just show off a little bit, please forgive me. Those of us who went to these very good schools, there was a book we read called Mother Courage and Her Children. I don't know whether any one of you ever read that book, maybe. But that book, Mother Courage and Her Children, is about the war in Ireland. That here was a mother who had children and had to fend for them during the war. And she had a carriage on which where she kept her things and had to sell them to be able to have her family to eat. So what that book talks about opportunity in conflict times, opportunity in conflict times, and the resilience of the woman, because she had to feed her children, therefore she had to be resilient. That is a different dimension of what is taking place. But let me look at conflict from the organization point of view. That conflict from the organization point of view, you find that if two people conflict, if two departments conflict, then the organization cannot achieve its goals. There is a reduction in the productivity. There is a reduction in the performance of the units, and this may lead the organization to not achieving its goals and possibly not even survive. So any organization that is going to survive and thrive must be resilient, and resilience. On this forum I've talked about the sources of failure for business. The sources of failure include market failure, government failure, and management failure. Now, management failure is when management is unable to do things, take decisions. You can't get the right people in place, so the business may fail, and will not be resilient. Government failure is when government fails to do a number of things. First of all, the monetary policy in terms of sources of money, interest rates, fiscal policy, and taxation. But there's also something very important in ability to maintain relationships with other countries. That can be a source of government failure. Market failure, as you know, is about competitiveness. Do you have the right product? Is it well priced? How are you distributing it? What's the quality of the product? All these, but these are sources of failure of business. But what are we looking at? In this case, we're looking at government failure, and it is government being unable to maintain external relationships that are conducive for the country. Now, the development of a country depends on the level of production in the country. What are you producing? That's how we measure GDP. Now, countries will be able to develop further if they are producing more and can export. If a country cannot export, then it cannot earn extra income to enable it develop, enable it become wealthy. And if it cannot export, it means that either the product is not good, or there is some degree of conflict with those countries where they are exporting. We saw the border closing with Rwanda for I think a year or so, and this affected the area. You know, people who were exporting to Rwanda from the Kabale region. They had challenges, and even the Rwandese who were exporting to Uganda had challenges. They didn't earn the wealth. So it's very important that governments maintain excellent relationships. You can see what is happening, that the government of Uganda is building a road in Congo so that it can increase business. Some people are questioning that, but you know, it's very important that you increase trade so that you can increase wealth of the country. So an organization can be resilient if there's peace between the two countries. But I'm also saying that you may find somebody who takes advantage, like Mother Courage, who takes advantage of the war situation of the instability to actually make money, to see opportunity there. So Uganda needs to export more its maize. Uganda needs to export its cotton and other things to be able to improve the welfare of the people in Uganda. And this will depend on whether there is stability, whether there is peace among the countries that we do business with. I would like to take the opportunity to invite our guest, maybe a brief introduction from the director or from the host, so that he can let us know some of the practical aspects of what he's seen. Thank you very much for going with us, Fande, and we look forward to your discussion this morning. Back to you, our host.
Thank you so much, our principal, Professor Munyua, for that introduction and the keynote speech. Allow me this time, ladies and gentlemen, to briefly introduce to you our guest speaker tonight. Briefly, he has a very long profile and a very experienced man from the military circle, and actually a challenge to most of us academicians with many publications. But briefly, I will look at his experience and the badges awarded to him from different schools. First of all, the ATGM platoon commander, this is none other than David Okumu Munyua, the ATGM platoon commander badge from the Missile Academy, China, 2004. The ATGM company command, BJ Missile Academy, China, 2007. The Small Craft Strategic Leadership badge from USA Navy in 2010. Also, the International Maritime Officers Course badge from United States, 2010. Also, the Navy Postgraduate School Masters of Science badge, USA Navy, 2015. Also passed through our prestigious school, military school, from Senior Staff College Chimaka, 2017 up to 2018. Wow, this is a very our guest today, who is presenting us. The topic is strategizing for business sustainability, being a topic to supplement or to support business resilience. And the case study is the East African community, and he's trying to actually tell us across conflict spectrum, how do we strategize for us to move forward or to have business resilience in our daily or in our own businesses, organizations, as a country as well, and globally. Afande Okumu David, this is your time. You are most welcome. Feel free to share with us each and everything that can help us in business resilience. You are most welcome, sir. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Benon Mahumuza, for that introduction, and also for inviting me to be part of this discussion this morning. I also want to recognize Professor Munyua, Professor Pontius Biarugaba, and all your colleagues in the Makerere University Business School for organizing this very important morning brief every Tuesday about business resilience. This is something very, very extraordinary, and I encourage you to continue to have it. And I know our people are learning a lot from this, especially after recovering from the COVID-19 scourge. And also within the East African community, we still have challenges. You can see how refugees are running to Uganda from Congo. All those are challenges within the East African community that are disrupting our different businesses, and that we need to find a way of how to go about with it, especially for the business community. We need to be able to continue to survive despite all those challenges. Before I continue, I need to make a few caveats. First of all, yes, I'm a military officer, but I'm not the defense spokesperson. In case you have any concerns that you want to raise in regard to the UPDF, the right person to talk to is General Felix Kulaije. He is the official spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense and also of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Then I will try as much as possible to be as simple as possible so that all our audience will benefit from the discussion. We have a lot of technical jargons in the military. We intend not to use them. I'll just try to be as simple as possible. And then because of time constraint, I will urge the audience to take notes. Then after the notes, you can go and do further research such that you're able to benefit more from today's discussion. Just to add a little bit about what Dr. Munyua told you about me, what you call directing staff or lecturer, formerly at our prestigious College of Senior Command and Staff College in Jinja. Currently, I am on exchange in Rwanda. That means I'm teaching in the Rwanda Defense Force Command and Staff College. We also send an officer to Uganda, and that is how we are strengthening and widening the East African integration process in the military. I encourage you academicians to also do the same. So with that, let's look at my agenda. My agenda will consist of a brief introduction. Then I will dive deep into the concept of spectrum, of the conflict spectrum. Some people call it the conflict continuum. Then after that, I will look at the business sustainment design using military approach. Then I will look at the sustainment of businesses before, during, and after conflicts. Then I will give some recommendations for potential business firms in Uganda on how to access the East African community market, despite some of the challenges of conflicts that we still have in the region. So as a way of introduction, it is not true that businesses always survive where there is peace and stability. I think Professor Munyua hinted on that. The actual businesses that do very well during conflict, but because they don't plan to sustain themselves after the conflict, they collapse. There are many, very, very many examples that I came across, especially in Somalia, the company called Bankrupt. Those ones, they survive where there is conflict because their business is related to conflicts. They do training of local military officers and do business in conflict-related issues. So when the conflict ends, they have to shift to another region where there is a conflict. And that is how they operate. In the same way, we witnessed in Uganda during the COVID-19 scourge, there are businesses that came up very effectively during that lockdown, especially businesses dealing in production of sanitizers. You all remember that. They produce sanitizers, they produce masks, and they survived up to the end of the scourge. Then after that, a few of them that managed to survive are the ones that plan to sustain their business after the COVID-19 scourge. So such a phenomenon is common, and we need to be aware of it. And my argument in this discussion is that you cannot only have businesses during peace and stability phases. You can start your business during conflict. You strategize on how to maintain that that business if the conflict ends. The best way to do that is to be part of the community that you operate in, the market where you operate in, so that during their times of conflict, you're together with them. During their times of peace, you're also together with them, and you also promote the process of peacemaking. So that means our businesses in Uganda can right now go to Congo, where people are fighting, do strategies of how they can business with the people who are there. Of course, the others who rent Uganda as refugees, but there are those who are still there and they're surviving, and still they need to do business. And usually during conflicts, the returns are very high, but also the risks associated with doing business is also high. So if you know how to maneuver in such an environment, you can always be able to survive even after the conflict is ended, and even during the conflict itself. So I will simply highlight the strategies that you will use to sustain your business effectively during after the conflict occurred. Now let's make two key terms very clear here before we continue. This thing called sustainability. Sustainability, my understanding is that it is that ability to continue important functions of your business firm indefinitely without a decline in quality or quantity of your production. Is that ability, sustainability is that ability to continue important functions indefinitely without a decline in quality or quantity of your production. Now, resilience, on the other hand, is your ability to thrive in the face of change or in the face of disruptions. For example, when COVID-19 came in, many businesses closed, others never recovered thereafter. But those businesses that were resilient were able to come back to business and continue to survive up to today. So for a business to be able to survive effectively, it must maintain the two, sustainability together with resilience. You look at them as one whole. That's when you'll be able to survive during conflict, survive after the conflict. That is the most important thing that our business community must be able to plan for, be able to effectively implement whatever they are doing in their business. Now let's look at the conflict spectrum. Conflict spectrum, yeah, trying to share it with you. is that drawing there, you can see it there. Initially, you will have peace and stability. And then if there is a disruption within the country, that's when it will start developing into a direct conflict, transiting through conflict prevention. Of course, when you see people are rioting, others are complaining X, Y, and Z, then there needs to be steps taken by the government and other interested parties to prevent that conflict escalating into direct conflict. Then the direct conflict is where people pick up arms and fight each other directly.
I find some volume, please. Increase.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So after the direct conflict, that's when the peace building process comes in, especially when there is a effort by partners to stop the direct conflict and transit back to peace and stability. And that will transit from peace building and peacemaking into the stability. Now, after that is basically the conflict spectrum. Now, this conflict spectrum usually emerges because of several reasons. Transiting from peace to conflict, direct conflict, can arise out of ethnic, social, economic, political and religious reasons. There are people who feel alienated in their community or in their country, and that's when they can pick arms and say we are going to fight for our rights. Others feel deprived economically, others feel deprived politically, and others fight religious wars. That's what you are seeing in Somalia, where they say they want the caliphate and the sorts. So those are the sources of conflicts, and they still normally start as structural or cultural conflicts before they can emerge into direct conflict. Now, the conflict prevention phase is dominated by peace negotiators, whose objective is to prevent escalation of the conflict. Next phase. Now, failure during the conflict prevention phase will eventually lead to the outbreak of the direct conflict. Here, when peace efforts are geared towards the conflict termination. Then the outbreak of the direct conflict does not stop the continuation of the negotiations for peaceful settlement of the conflict. And the belligerents may try to defeat each other by use of force of arms, but this usually never resolves the conflict completely until the underlying causes are sufficiently neutralized. Now, physical defeat or unilateral ceasefires will only create what we call the negative peace. That's according to Danton. Negative peace means the belligerents unilaterally have decided to cease fire, but that does not mean they revert back to fire. Conflict, direct conflict. So we call that negative peace because it can easily revert back to direct conflict. Now, what we all look forward to is the positive peace, which comes after an agreement for the resolution of the conflict or the neutralization of the underlying causes of the conflict being agreed upon by the conflicting parties. Now, the end of all that is the peace building or the peacemaking phase, which is the phase where the partners that are looking forward to establish peace and stability in the country keep negotiating and putting a lot of effort to ensure that the belligerents don't revert back to fighting. Now, this will eventually lead to the stabilization phase. During that phase is where you're going to see a lot of reconstruction or rehabilitation efforts within the country. And this is where you're going to see very many non-governmental organizations, donors giving a lot of money into the market. That is where most businesses begin establishing themselves, because there is a lot of money in circulation, and that is what makes them to do a lot of business. But we've seen this happen in Gulu. During the Konyi War, there was very little business taking place in Gulu, but immediately that's around 2006, when Konyi was defeated in northern Uganda and relocated to South Sudan, and eventually to the Central African Republic. Gulu got some kind of peace, and now it is stabilizing. And so many NGOs came into the region, and many businesses established themselves. And that's why Gulu grew very fast. So that is what happens. Now, why do we call this a spectrum or a continuum? Because the conflict prevention phase, the direct conflict, the peace building, and the stability are not clear cut from each other. They interpenetrate each other. There's nothing like peace prevention stops here, and then the direct conflict starts from where conflict prevention stops. They are all linked, and they all take place concurrently. It is only the degree that keeps varying. That's why it is called a spectrum or a continuum. So with that, now let's look at how you sustain yourself. You plan to, or you make a design on how to sustain yourself across this spectrum or the conflict, or continuum, or the conflict continuum. And here I'm going to use the military approach. I know there are so many other approaches used by the business community and economists, how to design business sustainment in given market environment. In the military, we use what we call the estimate process, but in some other countries, like in the US, United States, we use the decision-making process, what they call the decision-making process. But we in Uganda, we use the British system, and the British system has the 6 steps. And those 6 steps are the ones that we use for making our design for prosecuting war, but it can also be used for prosecuting your business activities. So I'm bringing that knowledge and sharing it with you in the business perspective. So the first step when you are designing your business sustainment is to evaluate the market environment. Now, how do you evaluate the market environment? This one, you do it in terms of studying the market area. For instance, if you're going to go and do business in the DRC, the first thing you have to do is to go to DRC yourself. Study the market environment. How is the law operating there? What are the market opportunities within DRC? You look at the political, the social, the cultural activities, and the traditions of the community within DRC. You look at the level of conflict within the area. Is it at the prevention stage? Is it in the direct stage? Is it in the peace building stage? You look at all those aspects. Then in the second step, you evaluate yourself. you look at your capacity and your capabilities that you can harness to be able to tap into that market. And that is where you look at the resources at your disposal, you calculate the risks that will be involved, you look at the contingencies or the business continuity strategies that you can plan. In case you run into a disruption, how do you continue to survive? You look at all those possibilities. Then the third thing that you're going to do is to evaluate the challenges or the adversaries that you meet into the market. This one we usually like doing the SWOT analysis, what we call the SWOT analysis, which is the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. We do SWOT analysis of all the challenges within the market environment. That means you analyze your competitors, you analyze the infrastructure you analyze the laws, the economic activities, the political activities. You do all those analyses. In the military, we also do what we call center of gravity analysis to be able to identify the most important challenge that you're going to face in that market environment and how you can address it in case you're going to establishing yourself into that market environment. Then the fourth step is to develop what we call courses of action, or you develop options on how you're going to approach this market. Are you going to go direct and establish yourself, or you are going to use partners to establish your business in that market environment, and or you operate from within Uganda? So those are the options that will determine how you establish yourself in that market environment. Then the fifth step is to evaluate different options at your disposal against the challenges that you are likely to face in that market environment. Then the sixth step is to make the final investment decision. After doing all those evaluations, after analyzing the market environment, evaluating yourself, evaluating the challenges within the market, then you finally come to make the decision. Yes, I'm going to this market environment. These are the challenges I'm going to face. This is how I'm going to tackle those challenges. And this is how I'll sustain myself. So that is the final thing that you do when you are making a business sustainment design in the French market environment. But in all this, ladies and gentlemen, it is flexibility and agility of the entrepreneurship that will make you to be able to survive in any given environment. You will make a very good plan, but the situation will change in the market environment. Now, how do you survive? How do you continue to be resilient, to be able to sustain yourself despite all those changes in the market environment? Now, that brings me to relating this design to the conflict spectrum. As I said before, you can establish your business at any stage of the conflict spectrum. Don't worry about what the challenges will be like when you go into the environment, the business environment. And I try to analyze this based on the factors of risks, demands that are within the market, the costs of production and establishing the business, supply chain. Then I try to plot them against the conflict spectrum. And this is what I came up with. If I can share. If I can share this, you can see this is a conceptual curve. is a curve that involves demand, supply, the risks in the market area, then the costs that are involved in the market area. During peace and stability, the demand, the supply, the risks tend to move proportional to each other, but the supply is usually high. And they will reach equilibrium during the conflict resolution phase, where you have this red circle here. And then during the conflict itself, during direct conflict, the costs of production, risks, and then the demand for your commodities and the services will be very high. But during that time, supply is very low. And during the peace building phase, it is the other way around. You have a kind of equilibrium again established, which is comparable to the conflict prevention phase. And at this phase, you are seeing again demand, risk, and costs coming down, while supply raising up. So that is how the laws of commerce or the law of economics play during the conflict spectrum. So that takes us to how we can survive during all those phases. Now you know during conflict prevention, usually supply is in equilibrium, demand, the risks, the costs. Then during the direct conflict, supply is usually low, and then the others are high. So you can strategize based on that curve and see how you can establish yourself and sustain yourself in during any of those phases. If you have that knowledge at the back of your mind, you should be able to continue to survive, and be able to continue your business effectively. Now, my advice to our businesses in Uganda in relation to marketplace in the East African community is that when you go to any of these markets, for example, in Congo, in South Sudan, in Rwanda here, in Tanzania, in Kenya, or in Somalia, just be ethical. Do ethical business, because being ethical will make you to be able to survive even after the conflict is completed. If you do an ethical business, you will be at the loggerheads with your community, with the community who are the ones buying your sources, many of your commodities, and they will not support you, and you are likely to collapse. And then abide by the local and the international laws by engaging the community in the market equally. Be part of the efforts to establish peace in that community. Of course, all human beings prefer peace to conflict. So be part of them, be part of the community right from the start. And that means you employ them. Let them be the one to work for you. Let them be the one to drive the business for you. You maintain a low profile, especially when you're operating the country. Respect the religious, cultural, and social norms in that community. For example, in Rwanda here, we have what we call Umuganda. Every last Saturday of the month, the community gather together to do communal work. So you cannot say, for me, I'm not a Rwandan, so on that Saturday, I will not go and work. I'm a leader of the community. You are disassociating yourself from your market. So abide by the local traditions and work together with them, and you'll be able to sustain your business. You take your business to be theirs, and that is how you'll be able to survive. Pay your taxes, cooperate with the other members of the business community. As members of the business community, you will have a voice, because if you're alone, nobody is going to listen to you. But if you are part of the business community, you can talk to the politicians and listen to you. Support the peace process. I've already talked about that. Then have what we call a starfish strategy. You know, a starfish has so many fingers. Even if you cut one finger, the others will continue to survive. In other words, don't put your eggs in one basket. Have so many branches. Even if one branch is disrupted, the others will continue to survive. Then let the community own the business farm, lot shares, and have corporate social responsibility. Finally, in terms of recommendation, I urge all to assess the market in the East African community for our businesses. And that means, as a business, we should try to be in all these East African countries. I'm happy to say that the KCB, that is the Kenya Commercial Bank and Equity, are trying to do that. We have already entered the Congo, the DRC market. The other time I saw in the press, they are buying 68% of the banks in DRC. That means they're already establishing themselves. Let our businesses in Uganda follow suit and do the same. We're the ones trying to establish peace there, but our community is a bit slow in taking advantage of that. That's what happened in South Sudan, if you remember. And let's try to embrace that. As a business community in East Africa, push your politicians to remove the non-tariff barriers that are still disturbing our people. If you fight as a business community, you'll be able to achieve the objective of pushing the politicians to achieve the full signing of the East African Protocol. Then as a business community, you can establish branches and farms in the different partner states. I've already talked about that. And then another thing that I've realized is if you operate in the cyber domain, if you are network centric, it is more easier to penetrate the borders and avoid the constraints that are imposed on us by the physical borders. For example, here I'm saying the mobile money businesses. I can send money to Uganda as if there's a mobile money operator in Uganda that is sending money to my mother who is in Moyo district. And the charges are just the same. And nobody can stop issue a tariff on that. The operator is here in Rwanda, but is using a Ugandan MTN line to send the mobile money to my mother who is in Uganda. And this same person is sending money to South Sudan, is sending money to Kenya, is sending money to Mozambique, is sending money to Zimbabwe, and nobody is stopping him or her. And he has a very small 1 meter by 1 meter location in the town. So that is the strategy we need to embrace as Ugandans. That is operating within the cyber domain. It is virtual. You only have a very small presence, a footprint, but much of the operations are in the air. Nobody is stopping you from doing it. So we can use the same strategy to be able to operate in all the East African. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That is what I'm prepared for you. And I hope you will do more research on it and create much more from there. Thank you, moderator. Over to you.
Thank you so much. A very interesting presentation, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a very, very interesting morning. I think we've really gotten tips. We've seen how sometimes we've been crying here and there. Our community keeps on crying that the other people take up the business from Southern Sudan, from Kenya, from DRC. And I think really this is a great lesson to us. We really thank you so much. I want maybe to take this opportunity to again kindly invite our principal to give us a closing remark in regard to this morning presentation. Over to you, our principal, if at all it is possible.
Benon, you mean there are no questions?
No. I wanted first to have some kind of a remark towards that, then questions can come later.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you, our guest speaker, for that illuminating presentation this morning. I think, unfortunately, some of us do not do business, so we don't know about these aspects. But you highlighted something very important, which people may not know, that Kenya Commercial Bank was and is in South Sudan, and yet Uganda is the one which does more business with Southern Sudan. And this tells you the story that Uganda is not prepared in the financial services sector. And when you say Kenya Commercial Bank is going to Congo, and we who are opening up the area, we who are close to the area, we don't have a presence there. That is a shortcoming in our perceiving business opportunities in the region. And I think that I hope maybe because Kenya Commercial Bank is a national, Kenyan-owned bank, so the government of Kenya supports it. But true, business can come up anywhere, and even war opportunities give opportunity to business, war conditions give opportunity to business to thrive, and it all depends on how you, the manager, is managing this. I'd like to thank you very much. I think we've learned lessons from this, and our people who are doing, I hope we have our lecturers who teach East African integration, that these are issues that really we need to look at. I was looking at the newspaper here of what is happening in Congo as the part of the East African community, that Congo may want to get out of the community simply because M23 is allegedly supported by Rwanda. These are issues which I think we can sit on the table in that process you talked about, the conflict resolution process, that we can sit on the table and resolve it. Thank you so much. Host, with your permission, you allow me to log off because of another engagement at 8. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor. Let me now invite Diaz Kadugara to lead us into the Q&A session. And our guest speaker, you'll have maybe to respond to a few, but I know many of the issues or the concerns are a sort of compliments. Over to you, Diaz Kadugara.
Thank you so much, our host, once again for giving me this opportunity. To you, our guest speaker, Afande Dom. Wow, it was quite amazing. Thank you so much, and may God bless you for this wonderful presentation. I was amusing my colleague here. When you finished your presentation, I had to stand as a sign of respect. I said, wow. If you are not in the military, we would have probably snatched you and invited you to come and join us in the business fraternity. But I think you can also keep in the military. Right. I am seeing a question here. It is from John. John is saying, Afande, kindly explain to the business community how they will benefit through the African Continental Free Trade Area in relation to East African community. That is the question so far I am seeing. The rest are compliments. Thank you so much for the presentation. Members, if there is any burning issue, you can raise up your hand. I will be able to identify you, and then you put up your question. In the meantime, I think, Afande, you can respond to that.
Okay, thank you for that very good question. It reflects back on what I said about taking advantage of the opportunities that are within our region and also beyond. For instance, the African Continental Free Trade Area was introduced recently, and they are still piloting it. And just like I said before, go out and study. First, evaluate the market environment. Don't dive just because of hearsay that there's opportunity there. Yes, you may try, but the challenges that you may face there may surprise you because you didn't do the due diligence of first studying the market environment before establishing what to call a foothold in any of the market within the African continent. For instance, we had some Ghanaians who came recently here in Rwanda. And they came through their colleagues, because we also have some lecturers from Rwanda who are teaching the military academy here. They came through their colleagues. And when they came here, what they were doing was just to study how the market environment is in Rwanda. And I happened to meet them, and I encouraged them to also go to Uganda and study the market environment there. And before had taken their colleagues to Uganda, we visited so many places in Jinja, in Mbale, in Entebbe. And the impression they got was there are a lot of opportunities in Uganda that the West Africans can tap in. So my advice to the Ugandan business community is don't just be contented with the Ugandan market. Try to go out of the Ugandan market, try to study the market environment in the different parts of the African continent, and then try to establish yourself through the local people there. Because we still have a lot of, politics is always above, and it keeps hindering a lot of business activities. So try to use your colleagues, try to create friendship in those different countries and establish yourself through them, partner with them. And that way, you'll be able to avoid these barriers that are preventing you to easily export things and import things. Instead, establish yourself there and produce from within so that you can capture the market from within. And then another thing I need to emphasize is try to be network centric. If you operate in the virtual environment, it is virtually very difficult to control you. And that is another challenge that we are facing in the military. These days, you can't pinpoint where the terrorist is. He operates in the virtual environment. So it is very hard, and that is where the world is going. If you are someone who wants to be physical all the time, you will be left behind. The rest of the world will go. So, moderator, I also need to request that some of these questions, I think you can compile them, and then you forward them to me. But my intention is to develop this presentation into a paper, and then eventually I will publish them, and it will be available to all of you in different capacities. I'll be also having lecture at 8 o'clock. Currently it is 7 o'clock here.
Thank you.
8 o'clock is coming in a few, about 40 minutes to come.
Thank you so much. We really agree with you. And I think members here, I need to also, before we break off, to recognize, I think, the presence of Deputy Principal, if at all, is still online. And also, I have noticed the presence of Professor Rola Orobia. You are most really welcome, and thank you so much for your support always to be online. And I think with that, the guest speaker, we can also, I request Diaz to close it all.
Yes, thank you so much.
Over to you, Kadugara.
I think our moderator, in the interest of time, I have not seen any other burning question except for Alison. Alison Musinguzi has a comment here, but our contacts are there. If you are online, you can visit us at Kamukuzi, then your query will be answered. Having said that, I think, Mr. Moderator, we can end the session, I think, right off from here, and we go for other engagements. But back to you, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you all. Let's meet next week again at such a time. Have a nice time and a great week. Bye-bye.
There goes my baby, my baby. There's no other like my baby. So let me